Thank you, everybody. I just wanted to, it's a great pleasure of mine to be able to talk to you today about a project that Bell Labs has got going, which we do call Mission to the Moon. Now, if you give a Bell Labs researcher a hard problem to solve, you know, they always take things to the extremes. You can think about connectivity and building networks in extreme environments. You might think of a oil rig in the middle of the ocean. You may think of a wind farm exposed to the elements, or you may think of an underground mine. But these guys decided that the hardest problem they could solve was building a network on the surface of the moon. And so that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. Now, Bell Labs has actually a history of working in space. So in 1962, Bell Labs worked with NASA to launch the Telstar 1 satellite, which was the first satellite that broadcast television signals from Europe to the United States. Shortly thereafter, Bell Labs scientists detected the microwave background radiation here on Earth, which again proved the Big Bang Theory, to which they won a Nobel Prize. And over the course of years with Bell Labs and NASA, they worked together on the Apollo missions, the Mercury missions. So space is not necessarily an entirely new endeavor for us in terms of innovation. More recently, and closer to Earth, Nokia has worked on Project Loon to be able to deliver compact communications equipment for providing connectivity to remote areas. And in 2020, we were selected by NASA in what they call a Tipping Point Initiative project to look at creating the first cellular network on the moon. Tipping point projects for NASA are ways of getting technology over the tipping point so that they have a selection of technology assets for their further advancement of moon missions and eventually missions to Mars as well. So as part of the Tipping Point Initiative, we are partnering with two other companies who are on the bleeding edge of space technology. One is Intuitive Machines, who are going to build the lander, which will land on the moon. And the other is Lunar Outpost, who will provide the rover on the moon. And of course, Nokia is responsible for the wireless network that's going to connect the rover to the lander and provide the hardware, the software, and the services that allow all that to work. Now, that's all going to be bundled up on a Falcon 9 rocket and hopefully get into space later this year, launching from Cape Canaveral. It'll get into a high Earth orbit, then they'll do a lunar injection so that it puts it around a 100-kilometer orbit around the moon, and the lander will land near the Shackleton crater on the south pole of the moon. Now, instead of reinventing the wheel on communication technology and providing a proprietary space-based network, we're obviously trying to leverage all of the LTE 4G equipment that we all know and love here on Earth, right? And obviously, the environmental conditions are different up there, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second, because it obviously has to survive both the launch, the landing, and the environmental conditions on the moon. So I'm going to show you a little video here of what we hope to happen later this year. So the lander is going to land, as I said, near the South Pole. The lander is called the Nova C, and the base station equipment is essentially going to be deployed on the lander itself. So there's a base station, an antenna, and the evolved packet core are all sitting on the lander. And then the lander itself has this little garage, which has housing the rover, and the rover will deploy on the surface of the moon. And the rover has, as you would imagine, a UE-style modem on it as well, and some custom antennas that will then talk back to the lander. Now, of course, again, this is all a very different set of environmental conditions than you would deploy a network here on Earth. Obviously, there's a strict payload requirement, size and weight of the things that can go on the spacecraft. It has to withstand the vibration and shock of launch from Earth and of the landing on the moon. The environmental conditions on the moon, obviously you've got the vacuum of space, you've got radiation challenges, and you've also got temperature gradients. So on the sunny side of that lander, it might be actually plus 20 degrees Celsius, not so bad. On the shady side of the lander, you're going to have about minus 100 degrees Celsius, which is even colder than Finland in the winter. So we have to really have to test this stuff up, and the gradients are quite harsh. the other thing to think about, obviously, is that this is an unmanned mission, right? So this all has to be deployed autonomously. It all has to be able to happen without a hiccup. We don't want to be sending a field service repair guy to the moon to fix all that. So the redundancy is obviously built into the system as much as possible, so that it all work smoothly. Now, we've probably all seen, I don't know, this sort of cartoon of human needs. It's called the Maslow hierarchy of human needs, and sometimes people scribble underneath that pyramid free Wi-Fi as sort of the base layer of human need, right? But it is actually true if you think about it, right? As missions to the moon and Mars take place, obviously food, shelter, life support, absolutely critical. But communications, absolutely critical as well, right? The astronauts have to communicate with each other on the surface. They have to communicate back to mission control. And you're going to need, again, all these types of voice and data services, from high streaming video to remote monitoring of sensors, exchange of telemetry and biomedical data, and critical command and control functions for piloting rovers, et cetera. So all this communication is really critical for these kinds of missions. Now, again, we may not all get to be spacefaring billionaires, but it's pretty cool that our technology is getting up there. And our vision has really been to bring the state-of-the-art terrestrial networking equipment that we know and love here, harden it, make it survive the conditions of space, and put it up there and learn from that environment, and learn what the harsh conditions need so that we can deploy things back here on Earth in these more remote and challenging environments here on Earth. We do believe, in Nokia, that everything can be connected, and this mission to the moon is really just one small step in that journey. And I will invite all of you to come to the booth over in Hall 3. We actually have a selfie station. You can take a selfie with the rover on the moon if you like, and come see our new relaunched brand that you may have also noticed here at Mobile World Congress. So thank you very much.